Alright everyone, I'm back with part 2 of this act. Article 14. Ratifications, entry into force and duration of the Acts of Congress. The Acts of Congress are ratified as soon as possible, and the ratifications are communicated to the government of the country where the Congress was held, and by government to the governments of the contracting countries. In case of one or more contracting countries do not ratify one or another of the acts assigned by them, the latter will nevertheless be valid for the country which has ratified them. Those acts are put into effect simultaneously and have the same duration. From the fixed date of the entity into force of the acts adopted by Congress, the acts of the preceding Congress are abrogated. Article 15. Extraordinary Congresses. An extraordinary Congress is called together by agreement with the International Bureau when a request to that effect is made or approved by at least two-thirds of the contracting countries. The rules laid down by Articles 13 and 14 are applicable to the delegations, the deliberations, and the acts of extraordinary Congresses. Article 16. Regulations for Congress. Each Congress must draw up necessary regulations for its work and deliberations. Article 17. Conferences. Conferences charged with the examination of purely administrative questions may be called together at the request or the consent of at least two-thirds of the administrations of the Union. They are called together by agreement with the International Bureau. Each conference draws up its own regulations. Article 18. Committees. Committees charged by a Congress or conference with the study of one or more particular questions are called together by the International Bureau, in consultation, if necessary, with the administration of the country where such committees are to meet. Chapter 3. Propositions in the interval between meetings. Article 19. Introduction of propositions. In the interval between meetings, any administration has the right to address the other administrations through the intermediary of the International Bureau, propositions concerning the convention, its final protocol, and its regulations. The same right is accorded to the administrations of the countries participating in the agreements in regard to those agreements, the regulations, and their final protocols. In order to be considered, all propositions introduced by an administration in the interval between meetings must be supported by at least two other administrations. Such propositions are ignored when the International Bureau does not receive, at the same time, the necessary number of declarations of support. Article 20. Examinations of propositions. Every proposition is submitted to the following procedure. A period of 6 months is allowed for the administration to examine the propositions and send in their observations, if any, to the International Bureau. Amendments are not admitted. The replies are assembled by the International Bureau and committed to the administrations, with an invitation to pronounce themselves for or against. Those which have not sent in their votes within a period of 6 months are considered as abstaining. The periods have mentioned are counted from the dates of the circulars of the International Bureau. If the proposition concerns an agreement, its regulations, or their final protocols, only the administrations which have adhered to that agreement may take part in that procedure indicated above. Article 21. Conditions of approval. In order to become effective, the proposition must obtain unity of votes if a question adopting new provisions or modifying the provisions of Titles 1 and 2, or Articles 33 to 37, 54 and 59, 61 to 63, 65 to 68, 70 to 82 of the Convention, and if any of these articles of its final protocol, or Articles 101, 105, 116, 164, 175, and 196 as regulations. Two-thirds of the votes, if it is a question of modifying provisions other than those mentioned in the preceding paragraph. A simple majority, if it is a question of interdicting the provisions of the Convention, its final protocol, or its regulations, except in the case of disagreement, to be submitted by aberration as provided by Article 11. The agreements to fix these conditions to the approval of propositions concerning them is subject. Article 22. Notification of decisions. Addition and modification of the Convention, the agreements, and the final protocols of these acts are sanctioned by a diplomatic declaration which the government of the Swiss Confederation is charged with making up and transmitting at the request of the International Bureau to the governments of the contracting countries. Additions and modification of the regulations and the final protocols are drawn up and communicated to the administrations by International Bureau. The same applies to the interpretations complicated in Article 21, Section 1, letter C. Article 23. Effective date of decisions. No addition or modification adopted is effective until at least 3 months after its notification. Chapter 5 or 6, IV, I don't know. Article 24. General functions. A central office operating at the Bern of the name of International Bureau of the International Postal Union and placed under the supervision of the Swiss Postal Administration serves as an organ of annihilation, information, and consultation for the countries of the Union. That bureau is charged in particular with assembling, coordinating, publishing, and distributing information of all kinds concerning internal postal service, with giving, at the request of the interested parties, an opinion on the questions in dispute, with making known requests for modification of the Acts of Congress, with giving notice of the charges adopted, and in general, with undertaking such studies and work in connection with editing and arranging material such as the convention, and the agreements and the regulations may assign to it, or which may be entrusted to it in the interest of the Union. It acts as a clearinghouse for the settlement of accounts all kinds related to the International Postal Service between administrations requesting such intervention. Article 25. Expenses of the International Bureau. Each Congress fixes the maximum figure for the ordinary annual expenses of the International Bureau. Those expenses, as well as the extraordinarily expenses arising from the meeting of a Congress, a conference, or a committee, and the expenses incurred in connection with special work entrusted to that bureau, are shared by all the countries of the Union. The latter is divided for that purpose into 7 classes, each of which contributes to the payment of the expenses in the following proportion. In case of a new adhesion, the government of the Swiss Confederation determines by mutual agreement with the government of the country concerned in the class in which the latter is to be placed for the appointment of the expenses of the International Bureau. Title 2. General Regulations. Sole Chapter. Article 26. Library of Transit. The Library of Transit is guaranteed throughout the entire territory of the Union. The liberty of transit is for parcel posts to be sent by the land and sea routes is limited to the territory of countries participating in that service. Insured articles may be sent in transit enclosed mails through the directory of countries which do not take part in such service, or by maritime services where the responsibility of such insured articles is not accepted by the countries, but the responsibility of those countries is limited to that prescribed or for registered articles. Liberty of transit for air and mail parcels is guaranteed throughout the entire territory of the Union. However, the administrations do not have adhered to the agreement concerning parcel post may not be obliged to participate in the transmission of air mail parcels by the land and sea routes. Article 27. Prohibition against unauthorized charges. It is forbidden to collect postal charges of any kind wherever than those prescribed by the Convention and agreements. Article 28. Temporary suspension of services. When, as a result of exceptional circumstances, an administration finds itself obliged to suspend the execution of services temporarily, in whole or in part, it is bound to give notice thereof immediately, by telegraph if necessary, to the administration or administrations concerned. Article 29. Monetary Standard. The franc, used the monetary unit in the provisions of the Convention and agreements, is the gold of franc 100 centimes, weighing at 10 out of 31 of a gram, and having finances of 0.900. Article 30. Equivalence. In each country of the Union, the postage rates are fixed according to equivalence of corresponding as exactly as possible to the value of the franc in money of that country. Article 31. Forms. Language. The forms used by the administrations in these reciprocal relations shall be drawn up in the French language, with or without an interlinear translation in another language, unless the administration is concerned or arranged otherwise by direct agreement. The forms used by the public shall include interlinear translation in the French language when they are not printed in that language. The text, colors, and dimensions of the forms mentioned in the sections 1 and 2 shall be those prescribed by the regulation of the Convention and those agreements. Administrations may come to the agreements as to the language to be employed for official correspondence in their reciprocal relations. Article 32. Identity cards. Any administration may issue to the persons who apply for them identity cards valid as proof of identity for all post office business in the countries which have not given notice of their refusal to admit them. The administration issuing an identity card is authorized to collect a charge, therefore not exceeding 70 centimines. Administrations are released from all responsibility when it is proved that a mail article was delivered or a money order paid upon presentation of a valid identity card. Neither are they responsible for consequences of loss, theft, or fraudulent use of a valid identity card. The identity card is valid for more than 3 years from date of issue. I'm going to end it off there. I'll have the rest, another part of it up later on. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.